Hi, Jenny Jones here with your My Retirement Moment. And one of the biggest questions that we get here at the My Retirement Exit office is people want to know how much will they need. And, while no one really has a crystal ball, there's three elements that you need to consider when it comes to trying to determine how much you will need. What I have in front of you is one of the tools that we like to use to properly estimate one of the elements that may affect you. Let me give you the three elements again, just in case you've missed one of my podcasts. The three elements are distribution, knowing when you move into the distribution phase, properly estimating how much you will need in retirement is very key. Let's use a round number like $100,000 in salary that you're making before you retire. If you have $100,000 in retirement, you'd estimate maybe 70 to 75% of that particular income to be able to estimate what your annual salary should be or your distribution should be. So for example, if you were making $100,000, we'd estimate about $70,000 you would need in retirement because there's a lot of expenses, anywhere between 25 to 30% of expenses that you no longer will have in front of you. So that is one, the distribution. One of the second ones is life expectancy and estimating when you do retire, how long will you actually be in retirement? And no one really knows, but it's always good to estimate at least 25 to 30 years as a minimum. But no one really knows, but just trying to help you get to your number. And one of the third things I want to talk about today, and which affects a lot of people that they really don't consider, is inflation. Now, what I have in front of you is one of the tools that we like to use here at the My Retirement Exit. Is the tool that I have in front of you is the effects of inflation, so that you understand the impact that inflation really has. And most people really don't know what inflation is or how it affects them. Inflation is simple. If I go in a store and I buy a loaf of bread this year, it's $1. If I go in next year, it's $1.03, or it's still $1, but it just has less slices. So that's inflation over time. And anyone that's been around for some time know that the cost of inflation eventually erodes your dollar. So what I wanted to explain in this short video is the effects of inflation. Now, what I have in front of you is just a quick graph, and we always use this for our clients so they can see, is these are the inflation rates since 1956. And what we'd like to do is the average has been about, for the last, I guess we'll use the 80s. The 80s inflation was about 5%, and the 90s inflation averaged about 2.93. In the 2000s, inflation averaged about 2.5, anywhere between 2.5 to 2.7. And so I wanted to let you know what it was with the different periods, and depends on what period you retire in and or the overall average of inflation, because inflation is real. So this first page really tells you just a breakdown, and that graph tells you where inflation was in its highest period. I think the highest period was in the 70s, where inflation was actually 7%. All right. So what we're going to do is, what we do is normally we look at the next slide for our clients. Now, what we have here is you enter in, this is one of the tools we have here, you enter in the value of your investment. So let's just keep numbers round. Let's use 100,000. And what will 100,000 mean over 20 years? So let's say you retire with 100,000. And let's estimate it out over 20 years if that's the amount of period that you would be in retirement. What you're going to see here is at a 2% interest rate, and I think we said the average was about 2.3 to 2.5% on an annual basis. If we use just 2% here, the value in 20 years, 100,000 would be $67,297. Okay, so that's a loss of about 33%. That's why it's important to make sure your distribution bucket and or buckets, whichever ones you are using, have to get you a nice return to be able to keep up with inflation. This is the secret or silent killer of your retirement portfolio. This value over 20 years has lost 33%. Okay, so the 100,000 you would invest in 20 years would be $67,297. You can see that here, and this is just again one of the charts and graphs that we use here. And then what we also do is we can always put in an estimated dollar amount to show you what that will mean in the future for you. And the last and final slide I want to show you is what actually is the impact on the cost, on the monthly cost and your expenses. Well, if we put in, if we use an average cost of, or a inflation rate of about 2%, as we mentioned earlier, what you're going to see here is if a person had monthly expenses and their monthly living expenses was $2,500, and that's what their monthly expenses were. So over a period of time, what that $2,500, what it will buy you over that same period of time is $1,682. So if you already had a set payment, hey, these are my expenses, these are the expenses that I have, what happens is that 2% over a 20-year period of time starts to erode, and that same $2,500 that you had is now $1,682 with a 33% standard of living reduction. This has been My Retirement Moment with Jenny Jones. Thank you.